Opeth in CAUDA VENENUM. Latin for the poison in the tail. I mean, the artwork on the back here should speak for itself. I mean, let's get it. It's like some weird, basically band members looking like some sort of beast-looking scorpion thing. Nice. Also has a weird sense of elegance to it, but anyways, this is an album that's, I mean, it's number 13, but here's the thing about that number. Most of the time it's associated as unlucky. In this case, for at least as far as their discography is concerned, you could say it's lucky 13. But it's lucky and yet unlucky, because, well, it's 2019. And what we've gotten this year, in terms of 2019, for music at least, especially coming out of, given the month of August, which had lots of good shit. Hell, some things I didn't even get to talk about, like the new Slipknot record, for example. Good shit, by the way. I'm just going to leave it at that for now. For now, until I decide to finally get the damn thing to talk about it. In the meantime. Although, this Unlucky 13, this album is more thematic. There's dark, a pretty dark album in and of itself. It's still a anyone who's expecting this album, I didn't really go in expecting a lot, actually. Especially given what we got out of Sorceress, and then looking back on that album, I don't look at it as fondly as I initially did, especially once I finally, you know, went deeper and have a much deeper dive into their discography. Though it's not bad if you decide to kind of ignore the previous two albums prior to Sorceress. Like, if you followed the Sorceress up with Watershed, you feel like you didn't miss a beat. Like, that's what I felt like Sorceress was. It was it would have been the perfect follow-up to what Watershed was, and would have eased everyone into what they would have started to sound like, but then again, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, if I would say maybe skip Heritage and just go to Pale Communion, but I don't know if I can, which I could tell with Pale Communion, at least from the only one listen I've had, production-wise, and whatnot, it seems like a better record, or at least a better, more refined idea of what they were trying to do with Heritage, but couldn't do, because it seemed there was so much other things happening for both, mainly for Steven Wilson and Michael Eckerfeldt, given Steven Wilson was still more focused on his second solo album, Grace for Drowning, at that point, and him and Michael Eckerfeldt had a side project. So and have considered those to be sister albums to Heritage. And Heritage apparently is considered to be among the weakest of the three. It just wasn't a good main focus, as it should have been. And it does hurt Opeth a little bit, because, you know, that transition did kind of mess with the metalhead fans, and they never properly recovered. There are some people who basically said Pale Communion was a better idea of it, and they were able to adjust to it better, but they still didn't like it as much and felt like Damnation was a better outlet. You know, that's what's even makes the whole thing with that record of Heritage more considered amongst many fans to be of their biggest blunder. Not just because of my reasons, but also for the fact that they've worked with him. Because there was probably hype going into that record because of Steven having worked with Opeth before, with three albums straight making solid material. Granted, Deliverance is a bit of those three in a row. Deliverance is kind of weaker, especially held in comparison to Blackwater Park. We'll eventually get to that. I have plans for that, by the way. But, you know, and that's the thing. Damnation is a better example of what a good, even more coming off of listening to Deliverance, Damnation's an even better listen for that reason. And I feel like with what we were getting here with CAUDA VENENUM is, well, here's the thing. I had 5 days. Unfortunately, a lot of stuff happens, and a lot of stuff I try to keep up with. Especially with my stuff involving my segment for Schmodown Rocks. which you think I would have changed the name to that, but because of the guys involved in Schmodown, for some reason I'm keeping this name. I still want to talk more music, and some classics are going to come along the lines I need to deep dive into. So yeah, this thing is damn solid. My issue is, well, it's not grabbing me, man, like I would have liked it to, you know? And I didn't really get that feeling and the moments that it did is most people would complain about. And the heaviest moment is the one track that on both translations of this album, Swedish, that's what's even funnier is how they use this Latin phrase, yet the album's only other language besides English is Swedish. The band members' native Michael Eckerfeldt and most of the band members' native language, native tongue, of course. And from what he has stated, the Swedish version, which I have yet to listen to, is considered the better half. It's considered the better version, though you'll still enjoy the English version, and I can tell you, just off the English version, you'll definitely get some enjoyment out of it. So, but it does make me curious a little, and what enjoyment I did get out of it does make me curious on how the Swedish version differs. And I think it's more in the way Michael Eckerfeldt does his vocals within his native tongue, I think. To the point where I think I've heard from, Boehner had said something, I don't know what song it was, but it said that there was a moment where his yell comes off like a growl. And it's probably in the Swedish version, because I never noticed anything in the English. But that's the thing about it. So, and it's in different languages, and some of the versions in English are kind of slight botching of the actual titles of the actual English translation of the Swedish versions. As he had kind of stated already in Heart in Hand, Dignity was not the actual translation of the Svegetsprings, or however you say it in that native tongue. I'm sorry, that's why I'm not bothering it. Plus, that's part of the reason why I didn't, because I know I butcher the shit out of it. So I'm sorry to anyone from Sweden who's watching this. So, especially the members of the band, including Michael, included all that. But yes, this album is all over the place. I feel for the most part, if I had to compare it to any past records, it's more so what we've gotten from the band through Pale Communion and through Sorceress. But there's also some sort of feel about it that kind of is like that of Damnation. Dare I say maybe Watershed, but I'm here nor there with that record, honestly, amongst the heavier discography. But yeah, the thing about it is, plus, there's not exactly a track on here quite like what we got last record with something like Sorceress. Or at least vocally, he doesn't hit certain things to me that are hit that kind of way. To me, personally, it's not that he's bad. He doesn't sing. That's the thing. Part of the reason why I'm glad he decided to transition more into progressive rock, because Eckerfeldt is actually a fairly good singer. Or at least you could tell, at least from the certain times when Steven was kind of wasn't collaborated, you could tell he's a better singer. And I like Steven Wilson's stuff, and what he's starting to do now is awesome as well. As I've already stated within the album of his last release, To the Bone, which if you haven't seen it, go check it out, look for it if you have to. And yeah, I enjoyed this album. I just feel as though, because of how good we've had it this year for the most part, in terms of rock and even metal, I don't expect a lot of people to really talk about this album as much. Or, like, they haven't yet to truly wow us. And I don't think they really did, or at least not to the extent that I felt somewhat wowed about Sorceress, or enough to the point where I was like, maybe I should check out their stuff, this album and their other stuff. And I did, and yeah, I understand why people talk about albums like Still Life, My Arms Are Hers, Blackwater Park, Damnation, Ghost Reveries, and wherever else you can find in the prog stuff. More so the Sorceress album, to be honest, but there's the heaviness, the more proggier aspect that is of Pale Communion, and this one has a certain sense of dark aurora around it that's similar to that to Damnation, I guess, but doesn't. I wouldn't say it's quite there. And they do experiment with different ideas compared to those previous albums, I guess, and that's more so some of the more choiry stuff like you've heard through certain tracks like that, but it's more to me like I love the more galloping riffs that Heart in Hand does. At least they've grown on me, I guess. And it seems that on the heavier, if they are technically metal at this point, if at all, it's more in the more traditional metal sense, bordering a little bit on doom metal, I guess, or maybe folk metal minus, or death and roll minus death growls or black metal screeching and so on, and those more extreme types of vocals, which is what I kind of get out of it, and it gives that it's definitely the modern, taking that old school prog style with that modern production gloss, or at least that sort of thing that they have been doing, at least that has worked for them production wise within the past couple releases, and even Damnation for that matter, and brought it here. And some other ideas, the ones, my standouts to me, despite what most people will tell you, the one track that is the same title for both the Swedish and the English, which I can actually pronounce as Charlatan. And some people bitch about this, and for me, my feelings towards this is I like this track a lot. Especially when that bass comes in, man. It's the certain heaviness to it. I understand because of the way, the kind of mood you're in from Lovelorn Crime, that's another thing. I like the singles, but it's once Next of Kin hits and we get into the deep cuts, that's when things do kind of start getting interesting for a while. Although the highlights are very more obvious for me in some moments of Lovelorn Crime, it eventually progresses into getting heavier in sound, and then Charlatan comes in and does get heavy, but I could see how it comes off jarring, I guess, because of the mood, that kind of mood, the particular type of mood that puts you in, to where it kind of makes you feel Charlatan's out of place, but yet for some reason I can't help but not enjoy the riffing on this fucking thing, especially the bass, which I believe is kind of gritty. If growly but kind of gritty, I don't know if I'll be able to pronounce the name of the bassist on this band, but, or at least the bassist currently, I guess you should say, because there's plenty of lineup changes. Hell, besides Michael Eckerfeldt, the only member I could tell you is probably former drummer Martin Lopez, who's now currently a member of, Soen. But that's all I could give you, sadly. And it's not a diss to the rest of the band. They do their parts clearly well, and it's definitely a lot of keyboards going on here too. It's more, their sound is, at this point, has become more, if anything, metal. It's more, like I said, more traditional in the Black Sabbath. And during What's in My Bag I saw from Michael Eckerfeldt, he did cite Judas Priest's Sad Wings of Destiny, and I feel like that record might have also played a part in influence in terms of some of the ideas of the heavier riffing. Maybe even more so some of the galloping riffs on Heart in Hand. Or at least that's what I believe. Some of the other times, especially though the Black Sabbath-y moments that I appreciate the most has been on Charlatan. In terms of the guitar and the bass, though I wouldn't go as far as to say to the point of sludge or stoner necessarily. Maybe they might border closer to stoner rock and more psychedelic rock, feeling type of progressive sound, I guess. That kind of more hard psychedelia, I guess you could say, is what they seem to be more closer in line with. And I really do enjoy this album for that. For those purposes, you definitely get something out of it. And there are moments where you can kind of feel a little bit of something, especially around the end. But, I mean, it takes a little while to grow on you, I guess. And I think it's also the fact I've been spoiled by what Soen kind of brought us. And that might have also a little bit for me. as a nice little teaser to wait for the next Tool and this new Opeth record here, and it seems like it was a good that album itself might have prepped me for this a little bit. Between that and what I got out of Sorceress, I mean, it's fine. It's a fine release. I don't think they've truly full on wowed us anymore, and I don't think they can at this point. But to say that they don't have the ability to put out something that's at the very least solid would be complete me basically showing you saying complete total bullshit. And that's not the case with Opeth. Opeth still is a name to be recognized, whether it be through not only metal but now even to the extent of the prog world. And I think this record does solidify that in a way that's like Sorceress to an extent, somewhat finds a way to satisfy at least the prog metal masses, if not the more standard and more standardized of metalheads today. So overall, I enjoy this record. All I can really say is I like it. I wanna go as far as to say I get to give it the horns. I can't say it's a masterpiece by any means, but I definitely enjoy this record. Sorry. But there's just so much other stuff that have happened over the past, even in August for that matter, that have already come out that I'm more thinking about more of and wanting to come back to more than this album. But it's not like I don't want to, and I'm even having just gone off the English version, I'm somewhat interested and intrigued, even through certain interviews from Michael Oeckerfeldt, and wanting to check out the Swedish version when I get the time to pass to do so. And that's all I have, honestly, to say about this. It's definitely enjoyable enough to where it's worth purchasing for sure. Oh, and also the artwork's pretty cool, I think. I'm not to say it's not that this beauty didn't spoil me, I guess, in terms of artwork, because Tool usually tends to, but Opeth is definitely still a good, in terms of both, whether it be metal or prog, or just rock in general for that matter, whether it be more lenient on the harder or more metal side, or just the more progressive and experimental side that it seems the band tends to lean towards, of those directions. It's definitely interesting. I forgot to mention the Gator, which I believe is one of the more jazzier moments in this album, and that I also too enjoy as well. And yeah, overall, it's a solid album. And yeah, definitely I definitely will put it up on my higher list, but I'm not super wowed, I guess I should say, with them at this point, but I'm still will look forward to, I guess, the next one, but I'm not going to be expecting a whole heck of a lot. I didn't really go into this one. Kind of wound up slightly pleasantly surprised, but also kind of got a little bit of what I was kind of expecting at the same time. And I guess enough to say that this is definitely pretty damn good. So even just for having it, again, with the English version. So what did you guys think of Opeth's in CAUDA VENENUM? And did you guys like it? Did you not like it? And do you wish that and you're still probably bitching about Michael Oeckerfeldt doing growls or something and more in the albums, probably because it's understandably that it just comes out better in the studio somehow than it does live. I've seen live versions. It's not the same, honestly. But it's not that the performance is bad. It's not. I'll tell you that right now. So, but just leave a comment below. Let me know. Rock the like button on this video if you like this with thrust, if you must. Also, hit that subscribe button. Click that notification bell to get more to see more of my videos if you'd like. And then link in description below to my Facebook page, where you hopefully should like and follow me there. And as always, guys, keep it random, keep it real, keep it rocking. I will see you in the next video. which might be an old school review, maybe a Shot on Rocks, you know. Probably Joker, actually. I'm gonna try to make sure to see that for sure. And at some point down the line, hopefully before the end of the year, I'll probably talk about Peanut Butter Falcon, or at least once I finally get a chance to see it. I'd love to. But anyway, that's about it. Take care, y'all.